All right, it's a victory Monday, and the Steelers coming off a 27-22 win on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. They are now 7-6. They are now sitting alone atop the AFC North. And we'll break down everything that went down Sunday, as well as look ahead a little bit as we enter the final four-game stretch of the 2025 regular season. Welcome into Believe in Steelers, everybody, powered by FanDuel. Jarrett Bailey here with you as always. The Steelers get a win on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. And, I picked them to win this game. Nick Faribault was with us for the preview show. I said it was going to be a little bit more low scoring. I predicted a 19-16 win, a little bit higher scoring than that. But this is a game that they usually win, historically speaking. They lost the last two in this rivalry, both of which came in Baltimore. But they'd won 7 of the last 10. The Steelers historically have played very well against Lamar. And we saw another instance of that on Sunday where defensively they kept the Ravens largely in check, especially in the passing game. And offensively, they finally broke out of this shell that they had been stuck in for well over a month. And it was just really good to see. So let's start with the offense. First play from scrimmage, Aaron Rodgers, 52-yard bomb to DK Metcalf. They hadn't had a completion north of 20 air yards since, it was week 8, week 7. It had been a while. And so seeing that right off the bat, that aggression set the tone for the day for the Steelers. And later on in the drive, they're inside the 10. It's 4th and 1. Credit to Mike Tomlin. He goes for it. They pick it up. And then Aaron Rodgers runs it into the end zone for his first rushing touchdown in 4 years. Gives us the discount double check. And I got to say, as a Aaron Rodgers fan, seeing him do the discount double check title belt celebration in a Steelers uniform, very fulfilling as a Steelers fan and as a guy that really likes Aaron Rodgers. So that was really cool to see. And that drive really, like I said, set the tone for what the Steelers were going to do all afternoon. And I appreciated the fact that they were aggressive, dialing up a 50-yard pass on the first play of the game, going forward in the red zone, being aggressive, and Aaron, turning back the clock a little bit, getting in the end zone for the first touchdown of the game, really set the table for what the game was going to look like. This, you can make the argument, was Aaron's best game as a Steeler. He's had a couple games where he's thrown 4 touchdown passes. Did it week 1 against the Jets, did it week 7 against the Bengals. This game, though, throws for a season-high 284 yards, found consistent success pushing the ball downfield to DK Metcalf, had a 30-yard completion to Calvin Austin. Aaron was able to find success in that realm all day. So he goes 23 of 34, 284 yards, passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown, just a really well-rounded game for Aaron, protected the ball. And this is what the Steelers offense can look like when it's clicking on all cylinders. DK Metcalf, we said arguably Aaron had his best game as a Steeler. It's inarguable that DK had his best game as a Steeler. 7 catches, 148 yards for DK. This is why they paid him. Games like this where he showcases hey, when I'm at the top of my game, I can be looked at as one of the better receivers in football. Multiple long catches. One where he pinned it on his shoulder pad falling out of bounds. The first one of the game that gets 52. He was reliable all day. Aaron looked his way all day. And it proved to be successful. And, maybe an underlying aspect of that is the fact that they had veterans called up to play in this game. They signed Adam Thielen last week. He didn't go to the practice squad. He was a 53-man roster addition. He plays in this game. They call up Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who plays in this game. And look, Adam Thielen had 1 catch for 4 yards. MVS didn't have a catch. But I think there's something to say for the fact that the defense knew, all right, we got to at least pay attention to Adam Thielen. We got to at least know where MVS is on the field. Compared to, if Scotty Miller had been out there, no disrespect to Scotty Miller, compared to if Calvin Austin had been there much more than he was. And Roman Wilson, I didn't understand scratching Roman Wilson for the game because he was at least getting open. I would have scratched Calvin Austin and just made Roman Wilson the guy that played the Calvin Austin role and, put somebody else back to return punts. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But regardless, having Adam Thielen on the field, having Marquez Valdes-Scantling on the field, didn't put up any numbers whatsoever. They had a catch and 4 yards between them. But knowing that they had to at least account for guys who have, MVS last year with the Saints consistently took the top off of defenses, had 4 long touchdowns for New Orleans last year. Adam Thielen had a very good season, especially in the last month of the year last year with Carolina, and a proven veteran, multiple-time Pro Bowler who you at least got to know where he's at. And so didn't show up on the stat sheet, but I would expect those guys to continue getting looks going forward and to remain on the 53-man roster going forward. What they do with Roman Wilson, I don't know, but I do think that in the offseason, it just makes sense to trade him somewhere else because clearly they don't believe in him as a viable piece of the offense. Send him to somewhere where they will utilize him in that way. If you put him in the 49ers offense, I'm sure Kyle Shanahan will find something for him. If you send him to another team that needs a receiver, if you send him to New England, I'm sure he can maybe find a role there, although it is a pretty crowded room in New England. The Raiders, who have nobody, I'm sure he could carve out some sort of role. Any place where he could get a fresh start and have a fresh set of eyes on him, because I just don't think that he's going to be a guy who's around for the long term. It's pretty evident that they don't see a future with Roman Wilson. But I was really happy to see how well DK played, and I think that you can attribute some of that, at least a little bit of it, to, all right, defense has to at least account for Adam Thielen. They got to at least know where Marquez Valdes-Scantling is, and that opened up things a little bit and gave more opportunities to look at DK. He had 12 targets in the game. So they clearly saw something there, and they took advantage of it. Pass protection. They didn't have Broderick Jones in this game. Andrews Pete goes down with injury. They bring in Dylan Cook, who they called up from the practice squad. All of that, and Aaron wasn't sacked once. This offensive line has been such a breath of fresh air this season, considering the bad offensive lines that we saw in 2021 and 2022 and 2023. 2024 and 2025, we've seen a nice turnaround in the offensive line, and this young unit has really come into their own. Zach Frazier, very good center. Mason McCormick, good right guard. Troy Fautanu, very good right tackle. Isaac Seumalo was the vet of the group, and they leaned on him a little bit more once Pete went down, and they still held their own and got the job done, kept Aaron clean, consistently gave him time to throw. He was able to extend plays and not get hit. Offensive line did an awesome job in pass protection. Running the ball was a different story. 34 yards on 17 carries. They couldn't run the ball. Kenneth Gainwell had a rushing touchdown. I think it was from 6 yards out. But throughout the day, they could not run the ball. But offensively, the passing game was very good. On third down, they were pretty solid, except in the fourth quarter. We'll get to that in a minute. But over on third down, 6 of 14, that's pretty solid efficiency on third down. If you're hitting anywhere near a 50% clip on third down, that's pretty damn good. But in the fourth quarter, it became more about the defense. The Ravens outsnapped the Steelers offense 40-9 in the fourth quarter. The Steelers went 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out in the fourth quarter. But defensively, the defense kept them out of the end zone and only allowed 6 points on 4 drives for the Ravens in the fourth quarter. 40 plays the Ravens ran in the fourth quarter alone. That's absurd. 40 plays. They go 10 plays field goal, 9 plays field goal, 12 plays, turn it over on downs, and then 9 plays to end the game, which gets sealed by an Alex Highsmith sack. Alex Highsmith had a very good game, 3 tackles for loss in the game-winning sack. He's been very streaky this year. Remember, he had 2 games in a row against the Colts and the Chargers where he had 2 sacks in each of those games. And then this game, he shows up and has a tremendous performance as well. So nice game from Alex Highsmith. James Pierre and Brandon Echols. They have been such pleasant surprises for the Steelers defense. James Pierre gets an interception, continues like this very out of nowhere incredible season that he's had for about the past month, maybe even a little bit longer. I think it goes back to, it would have been like week 9, whenever the Colts game was. He comes in and just has played very, very good football. Reads Lamar Jackson very well, gets like a nice one-handed interception, sets up the Kenneth Gainwell touchdown to put the Steelers up 17-3. Like, he has had a tremendous like month and a half of football where he's been not just like a nice role player, he's been like a legitimate reason why the defense has been good. Brandon Echols. Nick Farabaugh brought it up on the preview show, I believe, and he, made the statement saying that Brandon Echols has been like the Deshaun Elliott of this season in terms of he was a very like low-key free agent signing, but he's proved to be very pivotal for the defense. Had another very good game on the first drive. One-on-one against Zay Flowers in the end zone, breaks up the pass. The Ravens have to settle for a field goal. He had multiple pass breakups in the game, and again, just continues to do the dirty work. Doesn't get a ton of attention, but he had an interception last week against Josh Allen, and then he plays very well this week against Lamar Jackson. That is a very nice resume builder if you're Brandon Echols, and he's proven that he deserves to get as many snaps as possible in the defense. So very good to see from both James Pierre and Echols having the games that they had, and that was really cool to see. Patrick Queen, I thought he had one of his better games of the year. Had the pass breakup on Mark Andrews in the end zone that prevented a touchdown late in the game. And I believe the Ravens settled for a field goal. And I think that was the second drive that they got a field goal in the fourth quarter. I thought he played very well. Like, overall, there wasn't too many glaring performances on the bad side. A lot of like stand-up performances in terms of like, hey, thumbs up, great job. There weren't like many standout bad performances. Chuck Clark got left one-on-one with Zay Flowers at one point, and that led to a 31-yard catch. Don't leave Chuck Clark alone in single coverage ever. Like, Chuck Clark, we know he's not very good. Played fine, though. There's a few plays against Mark Andrews where he was kind of left one-on-one, and he actually did fine. I think that's more of an indictment on Mark Andrews not being very good anymore, but I'll give credit where it's due to Chuck Clark. I saw, again, Nick Farabaugh pointed out some stuff in terms of the film where Y.A. Black being the true nose didn't really go well. I don't know if that's going to be a role that they want to pursue going forward with him. I think Y.A. Black is much more of a, rotational piece and true rundowns where he can just kind of pin his ear back and go at the, ball carrier. Anytime that he was like, the true nose, it didn't really go as planned. But yeah, running the ball gets a clear thumbs down. They only had 34 yards on the day. But when the offense, when the passing game was playing as well as they were able to pick up a lot of that slack there. But overall, a very big win. Pittsburgh's now 7-6. And they got a little bit of help too, because the Bengals lose to the Bills. They fall to 4-9. And while the Bengals aren't mathematically out of it because, the Steelers and Ravens could lose out and the Bengals could win out, and then they would win the division. So they're not mathematically out of it, but certainly things look dire, and they would have to get a ton of help in order to win the division. Cleveland got mathematically eliminated. So really, this is a two-team race between Pittsburgh and Baltimore. The Steelers' magic number feels like 2. I think it's the magic number for Pittsburgh and Baltimore in terms of, all right, if the Steelers win 2 more games, feels like this is on lock. If the Ravens lose 2 more games, which is certainly possible, they play New England, they play Green Bay, they play Pittsburgh, and this coming week they play the Bengals, who already beat them on Thanksgiving. 2 losses are certainly possible in there. I don't think that they're going to run the table, especially because the offense doesn't look good, Lamar doesn't look good, and defensively, you can beat them. With how good Green Bay looks right now, that's certainly not a game that I would be signing up for if I was Baltimore. And considering what we saw Cincinnati do to them, that's not a game that you can pencil in either. But they go to Green Bay and then to Pittsburgh to close out the season. 3 of their final 4 games are on the road. So they go to Cincinnati next week. They are home for New England, then at Green Bay, at Pittsburgh to close out the year. Going to Lambeau Field, week 17, that ain't going to be easy. Going to Cincinnati next week, that's not going to be easy. Hosting a potential number 1 seeded Patriots team. So I see 2 losses there somewhere. But the Steelers control their own destiny now. As long as they win and take care of business, they're going to be fine. Now, they're not going to win out either. I certainly see at least 1 more loss on their schedule. They play at home against Miami next week. That's a game I think they win. But after that, they go to Detroit. I don't think they're going to win on the road against the Lions. I know the Lions have kind of been in their own funk, but a desperate Lions team with maybe the best running back in football in Jahmyr Gibbs and a defense that's very good and an offense that at its best can put 50 on you. They did it already against the Bears. I don't think they're going to win that game. Can they go on the road and beat Shedeur Sanders? If they do that, and if they beat the Dolphins, I feel very good about their chances of winning the division. But if they choke on the road against Cleveland and lose that game like they did last year, and if they find a way to lose to the Dolphins, then you really set yourself up for, all right, then you got to beat Detroit, and you got to beat Baltimore again. But if they can go into week 18 with that game meaning nothing, that would be the best case scenario. But it also means that they'd have to get a little bit of help. Cincinnati's got to beat them. Preferably New England beats them and gives them the death blow. But if the Ravens fall to 6-8 and the Steelers get to 8-6, then you just got to win one of Detroit and Cleveland to really feel good about your playoff chances. Because if the Steelers can go into week 18, 9-7, and the Ravens are, say, 7-9, and it's already out of reach, then great. If they're 8-8, though, and the game is for the division, probably gets flexed to Sunday Night Football, then, that's less than ideal. Steelers got to win and take care of business. I also saw, after the win and whatnot, the usual crowd of Steelers fans who still cape for Mike Tomlin, tweeting out, Steelers, Mike Tomlin haters are in shambles. Like, not really. Like, have you watched Steelers football for the last 5 years? Like, they've been in this exact spot before. The exact spot before. They were 7-7 in 2023. And then got to the playoffs and then got their asses kicked by Josh Allen. They were left for dead in 2021, and they won a bunch of games late in the year, backdoored their way into the postseason because the Chargers and Raiders didn't tie, and then got their asses kicked by the Chiefs. So why would a game against Baltimore, a game that they usually win anyway, and that I expected them to win, Why would that all of a sudden change the discourse around Mike Tomlin and make all of a sudden go, win against the Ravens. Wow, give him an extension. Keep him around forever. It doesn't change anything, respectfully speaking. Yeah, they got a win. It was a good win. It's always nice to win. Does not change anything about the conversations taking place involving Mike Tomlin. Especially because it's still very realistic that even if they win the division, they'll host the Bills. And the Bills very likely will come to Pittsburgh again and kick their asses again. And then this win is left meaning nothing because, of course, it does. If he wins a game that matters, then sure. Then we can start having the conversation of, all right, maybe if he makes some realistic staff changes, especially on the defensive side of the ball, then keep him around. I would still be kind of opposed to it because you just got to try something new. He's been there 20 years. That's an eternity in the NFL. But there's still a very good chance that even if they get to the postseason, they get smoked, and then we're having the same conversation we've had for the better part of 5 years. Hell, hindsight, the better part of 10 years. So I don't get the people who are like, oh, Tomlin haters, they're in shambles. No, we're not. And by the way, I don't hate Mike as a guy. I don't know Mike as a guy, but he seems like an all right dude. As the coach of my favorite team, though, yeah, I'm ready for something new. And that's not unfair to say. Damn near a decade without a playoff win. Like, you got to face the music at some point. Oh, but he should be able to call his shot. No, he shouldn't. Bill Belichick didn't get to call his shot. Andy Reid didn't call his shot. Tom Landry didn't call his shot. Either you produce or you don't get to keep your job. That's not just football, that's life. So the whole Mike Tomlin crowd are like, oh, how about that? Like, yeah, that's great. Win a game that matters and come back to me. All right. Get some comments. Jarrett, I know you hate Tomlin. I'm going to stop you right there. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for watching. I don't hate Mike as a guy, but like I said, as a football coach, I'm ready for him to go somewhere else. But what do you think if you had a legit quarterback that covers up those weaknesses we had? The team is good with average and below quarterback play in the last 10 years. My answer to that is, who do you think's picking these quarterbacks, though, man? Like, he brought in Russ. He wanted Russ. And they brought in Justin Fields. He called the shot with Aaron. And look, Aaron's played solid. There was, a spell over the last 3-ish weeks where he's been bad, but looked good against Baltimore. And overall throughout the season is better than what Russ and Justin looked like as a collective last year. And, everybody wants to put the blame on Kevin Colbert for Kenny Pickett. There's not a guy on the Steelers roster that Mike Tomlin isn't involved in acquiring. He's been there for 20 years. Like, he's very much the guy running the show. Omar's the one who has to, go out and do it. But Mike Tomlin's saying, hey, let's go get this guy. Like, he's the guy who has the final say in all this. So I want to avoid coming off as like rude or anything, because I'm not trying to sound high and mighty. But 8 years of multiple different offensive coordinators, 7 different quarterbacks, like, it's just what it is at this point. So no, I'm just kind of over the arguments for keeping him, because I just don't see a good one at this point. Like I said, almost 9 years without a playoff win, especially if they don't get a playoff win this year. And even if they do, I'm not trying to move the goalpost either. But there needs to be real conversations had about starting anew, welcoming in, a new forward-minding, offensive-minded head coach, or at least if it is a defensive-minded head coach, bringing in a good offensive staff to move things forward. But, Mike Tomlin is running the show. So anything that's on the roster, man, like that's his doing. Jeff says the Steelers should beat the Dolphins if Etienne is unable to play. He's out with ribs. I'd be surprised if we go into Detroit and beat the Lions. We must beat the Browns. If we do that, we're in. Yeah, I think that they'll beat Miami. The Dolphins aren't good. They've beaten up a lot of bad teams. They did get a win over the Bills, and that's, fine, whatever. But Buffalo's been kind of weird this year too. They've beaten up on largely bad teams. They beat the Jets, who were starting a quarterback no one's ever heard of the other day on Sunday because both Tyrod and Justin Fields are hurt. So the Dolphins don't worry me. Now, the Steelers aren't a great team either, so they very well could lose to Miami. But I think that they beat Miami. I do not think they beat Detroit. But I agree. It comes down to, okay, can you beat the Dolphins at home? Can you go on the road and beat Shedeur Sanders? That's a great defense that Cleveland has. Cam Ward just put 31 on them. You got to give me something here, man. So if they can do that, I feel very confident about their odds of making the postseason, especially because Baltimore's schedule, 3 of their final 4 games are on the road. The only home game they do have is against New England. It's not going to be an easy game. They go to Lambeau week 17. I think that they lose that game. I think they lose to the Bengals. So if they can get a little bit of help, the Steelers, and Baltimore can lose 2 more games, that's why I said Pittsburgh's magic number is 2. If they can win 2 more games and Baltimore loses 2 more games, then they're solid. But I do feel very good about their chances of making the postseason. But we all know, that's not enough. If the Steelers were the Titans, it would be more than enough. If the Steelers were the Giants, it would be more than enough. But just making it to the postseason, man, it's not going to cut it. Especially when we look at how the AFC is playing out. It's a very weird year. The Chiefs probably not getting in. Baltimore probably not getting in. And you look at all these current playoff teams. Like the Broncos, their defense is very good. That offense is a paper tiger. That is not a good offense. The Patriots are legit. Offensively, they're very good, but defensively, you can beat them defensively. The AFC South, God only knows. If the Texans win that division and the Steelers can avoid them in the wild card, that would be great because if Houston comes to Pittsburgh, that's going to be an ass whooping. But by and large, there's a very real possibility that the AFC Championship game is the number 5 seed Buffalo Bills hosting the number 7 Houston Texans. That's very real of what could happen. And if things remain the same as they are right now, that's what the playoff picture will look like, is Buffalo number 5 going to Pittsburgh number 4. And we already saw what that looks like. So if they play the Bills at home in the postseason, I don't think they're winning. If they play the Chargers at home, that's a different story. I think that they can beat the Chargers. If they play the Jaguars at home, think they can beat the Jaguars. And if by some miracle of God, the Colts still get in while starting Riley Leonard, yeah, I think they can beat Riley Leonard. So the AFC is very weird this year, especially if Baltimore and Kansas City both miss out. But that doesn't leave it wide open for the Steelers, per se. I think it leaves it wide open for teams like Buffalo and Houston, who are head and shoulders better than the Denvers and the Jacksonvilles and, teams of that ire. Jeff says, have we had a Tomlin game yet? Like a game that we should win, but bad play calling botched the team. Yeah, probably. I think the Seattle game, if not for the Caleb Johnson thing, I think they win that game. And if not for, early on, they are marching down the field. It's a 4th and 1 in Seahawks territory, and they punt. Like that was a very Tomlin cowardly type of call. I think that they beat Seattle if not for the Caleb Johnson thing. Just me personally. Is there any other? I mean, the Bengals game where the defensive play calling was just brutal. Jamar Chase has 15 catches on going into the final drive, and his 16th catch, there's no one in his area code. That's a problem. So that's a game that they should have won. They put up 32 points, and the highest paid defense in football couldn't do anything. Outside of that, though, they lost to the Bears, but Mason Rudolph was starting that game. I don't know how much I was expecting them to necessarily win. I may have picked them. I'd have to go back and look, but hindsight, the Bears have been pretty good this year. But though there are a few games where you can look at it and say, all right, this is a Mike Tomlin problem. I mean, hell, even the game against Minnesota, they were dominant for about 55 minutes of that game, and then the Vikings still found a way to almost win. There was 4th and 1 on the Steelers' final drive. They could have gone for it and probably iced the game. Instead, he calls in Corliss Waitman, who then punts the ball to Denmark for whatever reason. Now, look, they still won, but that was a very cowardly decision. The Steelers open as 3.5-point favorites against the Dolphins, according to FanDuel, which feels fair. I think that they're better than Miami. I think they're going to win, but the Steelers aren't a great team. So I'm not surprised that it's not a 6.5-point line. If Pittsburgh was a 10-3 team, then we could have that conversation, but they're not. So I would say 3.5 is a fair line. I think they win. We'll obviously talk about that more later on in the week when we get ready in the preview show. But right now they set themselves up to control their own destiny. As long as they win and take care of their business, they'll be in the postseason. That comes with the caveat of all of us knowing they're not going to run the table. They're not going to win their final 5 games. I would be very surprised about that, especially with a road trip to Detroit. So, but can they go 3-1? I think so. I'd like to think so. I'm trying to be as realistic as possible because, again, when you don't have a great team, 3-1 is a task. If this were a great Steelers team of years past, then no, 3-1 wouldn't be that much of a task. But when you don't have a top tier quarterback, when your defense has struggled on and off throughout the year, largely struggled in terms of yards allowed, points allowed, you can't count on a massive 4-game performance. You can hope, but nothing's guaranteed when the team isn't great. They got big names, but they haven't played big throughout the majority of the year. So they control their destiny. That's great. I would much prefer if they got a little bit of help, if Cincinnati beats them next week, and if Green Bay can beat them in Lambeau. If that happens and the Steelers go 3-1, they're in. Not only are they in, but they win the division. First time that they've done that since 2020. First time they've done it with fans since 2017. So it would be nice to see. It's going to be a very intriguing final month of the year. And we'll be here to keep you up to date with all of it on Believe in Steelers. If you're watching on YouTube, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I know it annoys everybody when everybody on YouTube says that. I totally get that. But it certainly helps out the channel. Believe it or not. If you're listening as a podcast, leave a comment, leave a review. Appreciate everybody who's spent their year listening to Believe in Steelers. And I hope you continue to do it throughout the rest of the season, in the postseason, and then in the offseason when I'll be I'm deciding which trips I'm going to go to, by the way. Usually I go to the Senior Bowl every year. Depending on if I go to the NFL owners meetings, I might be skipping the Senior Bowl. But live from the NFL Combine, we'll do multiple shows live from the Combine. So be sure to subscribe to the channel for all that on-site stuff. That's really, the meat and potatoes of what, people like in terms of content is boots on the ground stuff. I give it to you every year. So, not just for the regular season, but in the off season, when you want to know, hey, what the hell's going on at Omar Khan's press conference in Indy, I'll be there. What's going on with, everything else leading up to the NFL draft. I'm going to be at these places. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Be sure to follow along with Believe in Steelers as a podcast. Later on today, me and JP Acosta of CBS Sports will be live on the channel and on the podcast recapping week 14 on the pump fake. So all the content, all the NFL content I can possibly give you. So subscribe to the channel. And I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Again, we'll be back later on in the week to get you set for Steelers Dolphins, as well as multiple episodes of the pump fake as well. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. And we'll be back later on Believe in Steelers.